Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Fred Schenkelberg.
And I'm Philip Sage with the Manaway Group in Australia.
Hey, Philip, it's been a while since we chatted. I'm glad you gave me a shout and say, hey, let's record.
Yeah, I've just been submarined under with work and Weibull analysis and all kinds of things, including using AI.
Yeah, and that's when we were chatting and trying to get caught up and stuff. And it's like, it sounded like you were complaining you had too much data. Some of it not all that good, because that'd be another topic. But then you just seem to light up and get all excited about how AI has just been so useful for you. And I've dabbled with it a little bit here and there. And Kirk, another host of the show, sent me some research he was doing using AI. And he said, I can't find these papers. And he knew I had a library access at the university. And they were fake papers. They looked great. They looked right on topic for him. And they were just hallucinated. And the librarian confirmed, no, these are hallucinated. They don't exist. Stuff like that. And so I've had fits and bits with AI. But you started talking about writing, scripts and codes and I had hit record when you said, and yesterday I created 3 pretty solid outlines for technical papers on work I've done, but I hadn't outlined it yet. And it, knocked it out pretty quick, it sounds like. So I'm like, yeah, maybe you could teach me a whole lot about this, and everybody else that's listening is like, where are the sweet spots for using AI?
Yeah. Now there are, I guess, just a little bit of history. I've not been an AI user on the frontier, for very long, but I've definitely jumped in feet first and got an introduction through Central Queensland University that led to another thing, led to another thing, led to another thing, and now AI is pretty much a part of my life every morning from the beginning of the day until late into the evening.
Wow.
It gets used extensively, and it's an incredible accelerator if it's used correctly. And you did point out, that there are disadvantages or things that can happen with AI. For my journey, and I started with ChatGPT. A lot of people hear about that in the news, but it's one of those platforms that I've moved away from. And like a couple other here in Australia, we've basically canceled our subscriptions to that. I've discounted DeepSeek, although it was pretty good at AI-assisted coding. It made consistent mistakes in the code, and you had to keep fixing those. So I've settled on Claude, Anthropic's Claude, and I have a very top-level subscription, so I pay a bunch each month, but I feel that is absolutely justified because of the amplification and the work and the accuracy of the work that I'm able to produce. Now, having said that, you can't rely on AI alone. You have to have an idea of what you're doing, and it's a very, very important to use it in a responsible way. You mentioned the framework for the papers to give me some ideas of how I might approach those topics that I have already worked on, which are some pretty good topics. It was possible to take what I'd already started with and some ideas and some things I wanted to at least have in the general framework, and then let it produce a suggested outline that I can now work with. And what that's done is kind of get me over a writer's block. But for the most part, the last 4 months, literally, as a reliability professional, I've been working with massive amounts of Weibull data, and from a couple of the different industries here in Australia. And in one case, just when we talk large data sets, from an asset perspective, I had one client give me 7 million rows of data and say, "Best of luck. We don't know what to do with it. Here it is."
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that you mentioned that early on too, is, because the part I dread about getting a stack of data from any client is that there's typos, there's missing fields, there's a character where there's only supposed to be numeric, on and on and on. And it's like, and that's tedious using something like Excel or something like that. And 7 million rows, I don't even think my little computer could handle it.
It won't.
So but it's one of those things you were talking about writing various scripts and different packages that would really accelerate how you cleaned up the data and got your first grappling with it. It's,
Yeah, yeah, well, it's the one thing I'll say. I mean, the first, obviously, all those things exist in a real world data set, and then some things that you didn't expect. And trust me, they are occasionally some whoppers, some things that you just wouldn't imagine that somebody would do, but they're real.
well, you did mention one, and is this the one
Yeah,
where he said these things really don't last that long when you first look at the data, and then you realize that when they swap the tracking software they were using, they would replace parts but keep the original stuff in that field. So its original start time was 3 products ago or 3 cycles ago. And so it
correct.
gives it and that would be hard to find just in a regular scrub of data. The numbers look fine. You, but you had to
Oh,
apply a little bit of industry knowledge to going, no, that doesn't work that way.
yeah, no, and you're exactly right in describing it. It was three generations of an asset had been installed in the same data, the same data row effectively, as it was viewed by our team. But that you have a start date that's maybe 1956 for an asset in the utility business, and its failure date is 2016. But what you're missing in between is the fact that you've replaced the item 3 times, and so we've with other exhibits and some and a rules-based approach, we were able in some cases to actually reconstruct that timeline and then correctly and properly analyze the Weibull data. But
Mhm.
when you get into anything beyond 5 or 10 pages of Excel data, you literally are beyond the capability of a single person to massage that data. And so you have to move towards a rules-based approach. And a rules-based approach is not something that you can easily support with Excel formula. And at some point, even though Excel will allow you to have perhaps several million rows of data, when you put formula into those cells, the system falls over and your PC stops working.
Yeah.
So you just run into these real world limitations that you have to move into, for example, into a database environment, and you have to write SQL code or rules-based code to begin to cleanse and scrub and identify and validate the data. And some of it you have to ultimately discard because there's just no hope at ever recovering the real picture. And then on top of that, you put it through the workflow of Weibull analysis and produce the results and review those. And it's sometimes as I was mentioning, we've had a couple cases where we, just build a beautiful, absolutely gorgeous database that looks absolutely so innocent. And then when you analyze it with Weibull, you realize what you couldn't see is that that's not possibly true. You know, there's no way on God's green earth that that's possible. The results, and you look back at the data, and then you discover a nuance that had been literally invisible to the naked eye the first several times that you've been through the database. And
Hmm.
in some cases, those databases have been approved by clients, SMEs, as really, really good work. And then you go do the analysis and you find that there's still, there's several things to go contend with. And so that that when we look at data cleansing, we have a variety of tools that we use. But there's also a sanity check when the first couple times you go through the Weibull analysis. It does, and I guess the fundamental rule of modeling anything is that your Weibull model, it's a model that predicts the future, and does a lot of cool things, but the model has to match the real world.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
it doesn't, it's no good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's, all models are wrong. Some are, good enough, or I don't remember the exact quote.
yeah,
It was
yeah, I
Box, I
believe it.
think, or
Yeah, to a certain degree, every model is wrong or has an error, right?
yeah, it's just
It's just
a simplification of the real world. And
yeah.
yeah, that might be another whole topic is, uh, just what's good enough in the modeling or in the testing or in stuff like that. It's another
Yeah,
whole topic.
it is an interesting topic, and you do have to get good enough. I remember that poem that only the best is good enough. I forget who wrote it, but that kind of resonates in my mind, and it is an anti-good enough type approach. But really, when you're doing a model, you have to calibrate or at least verify that it matches reasonably close for the purpose that you're using it, and how close is really driven by the purpose and what you're trying to do with the model, and the sensitivities to that ultimate purpose, that any error that is in the model are relevant or they are insignificant.
It makes me think back to the AI topic is I wonder if I could set up an AI system to give me a data set that, because what I do now when I want to just play with some equations or fitting algorithms or whatever is I say, all right, I'm going to make a random data set from a Weibull with a beta of 2 and a, characteristic life of X. And I know the number that I generated with, I'll do like 20,000 points and I'll sample from that and see, play with this fitting algorithm. And, but that's not real data. That's mathematically created data. And I'm thinking, I wonder if I could ask Claude to say, give me a data set with 1,000 points that includes real life variation outside of the statistical model that we're basing it on.
Absolutely. And it would probably, from my experience, that task would be a 2 minute or a 3 minute task for Claude, and it even draw some graphs and write a few paragraphs about it for you with some key
But
insights. And I, like you, used to, I had a, VB routine to generate Weibull-based data sets, and I
mhm,
could vary the input eta, beta, and gamma values, and how many data points I want, and how many versions of the data set I wanted with random seeds
mhm.
being redistributed. And today, it's really a trivial thing to put into Claude and say that this is the prompt, what we just said, and hit enter. And there's a downloadable file. In a couple cases, I've got I've checked, right? Is it any good, right? And
Right.
uh, when I've done it with my code, I know what that data looks like, and I look at the data that is being provided, and I can't tell the difference between the two of them, other than I know where the data came from. So in
Mhm.
today's world, and I don't know that that would fully work with ChatGPT or some of the other evolving AI, Gen AI platforms yet today, but it will, I suspect, in time across most of the platforms, the same type of full technical capability will be there. So, if you need data, I call it synthetic data,
Yeah.
and I use that heavily in my research to look at data that suffers from this calamity or that calamity, or this incompleteness, or I want to be able to vary some noise around a particular value, or I want to do net present value calculations, and I want to understand the sensitivity of the weighted average cost of capital, or the consequence of failure. If I wanted For the a couple of the journal articles that I've been looking at, one of the things I need to have an array of consequence of failures that are created in line with the Australian Energy Regulator's formula.
Hmm.
Guess what? Guess what? 5,000 samples, right in line with the formula. It's all synthetic data. It's not real world data, so you're not crossing any lines with anybody. And what
Proprietary or
you're
anything.
able to
Yeah.
do is then focus on the important message. Is what are you doing with that type of data when you get it available?
Yeah.
And it's changing the world. I mean, there's always been this dream that we would begin to manage our assets at an individual risk level rather than a portfolio level.
Right.
From a top-down approach, we would come bottom up. But in order, and risk is fundamentally part of built on two things, as you know, the probability of failure or likelihood, and the other component is the consequence of failure or severity. And
Hmm.
so what you're able to do is in today's world with all of these advances very quickly establish a very realistic bottom-up risk for each individual asset. If somebody has, and I say if somebody's done the hard work of evaluating the consequence of failure at an individual asset level, which is a requirement of the Australian energy regulator for those in the energy sector. So that data is out there now, and the problem is that most of the risk management platforms, and they do often, and investment platforms use
Hmm.
Weibull, but they don't update the two elements I mentioned on a frequent basis enough to dynamically be able to drive, for example, your inspection schedules at an individual asset level rather than an entire portfolio level, or grouped by some geographic route. Be able to inspect the truly individualized, most risky assets at a certain frequency and manage the ones that really have present no risk to the network or to the organization at a much lower, lengthy interval
Hmm.
between inspections. So the fact is, the world of asset management is changing, and AI is helping to change that by making the information much more accessible and in a nearly real time or in a real time environment.
Well, it sounds like it's also at scale, where it's doing, a utility company is near impossible to wrap your head around assessing each asset. There's millions
There
of
are.
assets out there. So it's using that, the AI and the rules-based stuff and everything else. And that takes me to the next area, which I think you've got some experience on, is instead of going to Claude or a large language model, is use your internal data and use that as the starting point for teaching your system to help you do that asset management stuff and
Yeah.
the risk assessments and everything else. Yet I am still incredibly hesitant unless you have scrubbed your data. Like you said, you're doing all this Weibull analysis stuff and finding all kinds of weird things going on. Imagine the company that gets sold a bill of goods to make their own small language model for their own system. They take their CMMS and take the top off and spill it into the AI system, and off you go. And you will be chasing squirrels all year long. It's
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's still it's garbage in, garbage out. It's just whether it's machine learning or some version of AI to interpret and generate insights, you're still fundamentally back to trying to deal with the fact that credible you need credible data in order to make all of those things work, and credible and consistent data, because any training model or training algorithm is sensitive to the data that it was trained on, meaning the past, that
right.
where you've curated that data.
But we've been doing this, I'm thinking of the utility companies. It was on ledger books and it was on or, card catalog type
Oh
cards
yeah.
and a big
Yeah.
racks of wooden shelving, and then it went to early on computer systems with very archaic database functionality, and then it's probably the same data sets have probably gone into like 15 different formats and forms and translations and updates and carryovers and so on, each one introducing its own set of new features, air quotes
Yeah.
around features.
Yeah, there is that. Unfortunately, what I run across and see more often is that when say somebody upgrades to SAP, which is a pretty prevalent
Mm-hmm.
enterprise level application, it's good, very good in many cases if it's deployed correctly. And I'll put that caveat in there. But what people look at is because the old data system, whether it was paper punch cards or in a early database or an early business computing system, there's a need to translate the data between that cataloging system and structure into the current structure, and the particular area of trouble is most CMMS systems seem to be hinged completely on the work order. That's the driving vehicle that everything attaches to.
Right.
And so, in order to bring lots and lots of historical data in, you need to figure out a way to disassociate measurements and other master data from work order data. And what most people, and I've seen, there's people here that are suffering because of these decisions in Australia, is that the expense of doing that on top of which was never estimated in the original price to implement the software that has been bid in the open market. Nobody's got the money to do it. So as a result, if SAP went live in 2008, you lose the history of everything that happened before 2008 and all the measurement data and all the machine learning training data that you might ever hope for. And the only thing that you're able to maybe retain is the installation date of an asset that was installed in the 1950s. And beyond that, you have no records of anything that was installed,
Servicing, repairs, replacements,
that
nothing.
failed
Yeah.
before, 2008 when you went live with your SAP system.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's one of those yeah, I, I don't know. I equate them to shark oil salesmen. They're saying, oh, well, we'll clean up the data and do all this other stuff. Well, how are you going to clean the data? We'll train the system on your data and then we'll look for anomalies in that. And like, so where's the person in this loop? Where's
Yeah.
because that's where
Yeah.
it gets expensive and you get that consistency and accuracy and it does it smell good. So I
Yeah.
think we got a ways to go, and it's especially the long-lived assets is that we've got 8 or 9 different iterations of things to fix versus generations of data collection,
Right.
independent of the individual just poor data collection processes.
Yeah. Now it's the um the promise of AI is probably the same as the promise of IIoT and 4.0 and all the other
Hmm.
prognostics and health management, big buzzword programs that have come before, and data historians and SCADA systems, is that the data that we have is not necessarily the data that we need, number one. And then number two, we don't have enough rigor around the inputs to ensure that the data integrity is sound, and therefore we end up with this hodgepodge of data. And the question with machine learning or AI that is very important to stakeholders and to the regulatory bodies here in Australia and other places in the world, I presume is similar, is the topic of transparency,
Hmm.
meaning I can understand and trace how a piece of data becomes the Weibull number, for example. I
Right.
can understand and trace how that's used to generate a prediction of how many assets in this particular class I'm going to need to have funding for in the next 5 years to replace. I can trace, all these, other things. And even when we get into effective age or conditional age-based formulations, which is a whole nother topic, by the way, that I can go to the oil sampling records and understand where that oil value in parts per million came from. That is part of your asset health index, and that score of 59 is based on all of these other. It's a conglomerate score that's foundationally supported by all of these other test results and documents that you have.
Hmm.
When we move into machine learning and or AI or any of those other black box machines, we are literally dealing with a black box.
Yep.
And there is, of course, there are many ways to uh, really work hard to make sure that your machine learning application and SHAP values and all that kind of stuff to give you better confidence that the answer that it's giving might be correct, but there's still no transparency. And that's a fundamental thing that the stakeholders, shareholders, and regulatory bodies, where they're applicable, are very interested in being able to transparently review the information that you're providing. And so machine learning, it's great. It's a great buzzword. It's out there in the market. A lot of people are doing it. A lot of people aren't being successful, but some are. And the question becomes when you put that against the fact that it doesn't support the transparency, and you have this enormous effort in data collection, and you have a flawed data collection system. Does it make a business case is there a business case to invest all the money that you need to invest to make a machine learning or an AI driven application work when you already have at least fundamentally, but you with flaws that you know how to counter, uh, old tried and true Weibull analysis approach. And so there's a lot of things I think to consider before you jump in feet first with machine learning or some kind of AI interpreted thing. And the other thing, Fred, that most people aren't willing to do is to give my entire database up to the cloud and let a large language model figure it out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, we don't talk about our mistakes, our errors, our faults and failures. We just don't do
Yeah.
that. And it, for lots of good reasons. But the idea, I mean, I have not, I'm not paying a subscription to like Claude or somebody else. I've dabbled with them a few times, but it was, I mean, my spell checker, it had an argument with the Microsoft spell checker the other day. They went back and
Yeah.
forth and tried to correct each other over and over again. But it was like, no, I mean, I see it as a tool in the toolbox for writing code, for data, for cleaning up your data sets, for getting ideas for an outline for a paper. Uh, I'm still at that level until we have, as you mentioned, is if we're going to build a model on our internal data, we have to treat that as the proper investment to get good data into it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why so many are failing. It's just a new shiny thing, and we'll just adopt it and see what we get. And they get crap because they're feeding it really bad data to train it on. And they're like, you know, it doesn't have that gut saying, that that power pole was not installed in 13 BC. I just don't
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah, 0101 1901 is my favorite
Yeah.
that Excel
The-
defaults to when you do a date difference. If there's no date in the installation date, you end up with 125-year-old assets. Oh, where did
Woohoo!
that come
What a
from?
deal.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. A lot of them right there too.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
anyway, I mean, you're diving in much deeper than I am, and I found some great places where it's helping you out and making progress. I think it's still got a ways to go before we turn it over to the asset management role that we really hope it could do. I think
Yeah,
it's still growing. There's no doubt about
yeah,
it.
it's just a matter of time before it reaches a reasonable level of usefulness. And it certainly as I'm probably on the bleeding edge in the applications that I use it for, and at the same time, a human has to be involved. And when you look at specifically, authoring any kind of document, the academic integrity aspects still require, and I believe in wholly. That it's important to make sure that it's your own work, and that all your using the AI for is grammar, or reprosing, or maybe condensing a paragraph, or removing some repetitious
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Uh, and in the academic world, and I teach at Central Queensland University, and I've done that for about 10 or 11 years. It's a raging debate, and I was invited at the university level to talk about AI in academia, and how to better, we can't stop it, I guess, is the general view. But there are diehards that believe that everything that is done should be, back to the punch cards, pulling out the wooden drawers in the library, type catalog
Abacuses.
research, right?
Yeah, slide rules and abacus.
But at the same time, at the far extreme, what we can't allow, what we the learning environment and the responsibility that we need to instill in students, is that it's not acceptable to just go put a prompt in and say, "Hey, write me a thousand
Response
word
to this
essay,
question. Yeah.
that meets this marking rubric, and upload the marking rubric, and these are the requirements for the essay." That's absolutely unacceptable, and what we really want to lead the students as we interact with them during their career journey, is leave them with the tool set and the proper way to use that, and to where it can provide a benefit, then absolutely that we want to be able to use that in a responsible way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Um, well, I'm thinking of folks listening to this, where are you on the AI spectrum of, use or not use, or trust or no trust, or whatever? Has it worked for you, and what kind of applications are you using it in? And where have you seen it just go horribly wrong, and give us other things to be worried about in the dark of the night? That kind of stuff. But head over to accendoreliability.com/go/SOR. You can find a couple of ways to get in touch with us. Philip and I and the other hosts of the show are available through LinkedIn and our About pages on Accendo. So plenty of ways for you to get in touch. It's, as you said, Phil, AI is there. It's coming. It's getting better. Yet it's not a turnkey solution yet. You have to work with it and understand and check and all these other things. So we'll see what our listeners come up with on that. And we'll probably be back for another episode or two.
I look forward to it, Fred.
All right. Thanks, Phil.
You bet.
Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.